Please start.
Hello, everybody. So we welcome you at our Startup Leaders Club. And today our panel discussion is devoted to the Global Crisis 2020 Fast Track to the New Reality, Series 5, disrupting industries, creating new business models, and finding new opportunities in crisis. And I have today our honorable participants from both serial entrepreneur community and investor community. And my co-moderator today is Gianpaolo Parigi, venture capitalist chairman of Single Family Office. And our speakers include Chris Chan, CCO of Sweet Spot, Justin Hughes, co-founder and CEO of JoyHub, Sarah K. Lee, a venture partner, Peak State Ventures advisor to Adventures Partners, and future of learning investor and advisor to Montessori Modernized, Chuck Hattermer, co-founder and CMO of OneRent, Peter Ritz, co-founder and managing director of FatBrain, Karen Cole, partner of fundraise Partners. So we'll start with a brief introduction of each of our participants today. Chris, could you please join the panel and introduce ourselves? Yeah. Chris, you're muted.
Oh, there we go. Good morning. I'm Chris Chan. I'm the Chief Customer Officer for Sweet Spot. Sweet Spot's a technology company that does on-premise digital communication, and our focus right now is on education technologies, working with school districts to help with the distance learning.
Thank you so much. Sarah Lee, could you please also introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name is Sarah Lee. I'm a venture partner at Peak State Ventures. We're a $150 million venture fund, and I oversee the EdTech Future of Work portfolio.
Thank you so much. Justin?
Sure. Hi, my name is Justin Hughes. I'm co-founder and CEO of JoyHub. JoyHub helps multifamily real estate operators mine untapped data to surface opportunities to boost providing operating income for their properties.
Thank you, Justin. Peter, could you also introduce yourself and the company?
Hello, my name is Peter Ritz, and I am one of the executives at FatBrain, and we operate as a software company for improved dynamic risk intelligence. We able to apply very sophisticated technologies to help things like fighting financial crimes, but also have come across a wonderful opportunity to explain COVID risk to financial companies and others.
Thank you, Peter. And Chuck?
Hey there, I'm Chuck Hattermer, co-founder and CMO at OneRent. OneRent helps property owners manage and monetize residential real estate in the cloud. We do full stack rental management, so we help independent landlords achieve the same kind of operating scale and power as big multifamily apartment operators. And we do that across 300 zip codes on the west coast of the US.
Thank you, Chuck. And Kerem?
Hi, my name is Kerem. I'm one of the founding partners of Penrose Partners. We're a blockchain-centric advisory group based out of Canada. We advise and scale blockchain product companies and startups, as well as advise traditional enterprises, governments, and investors on investing and adopting blockchain technologies.
Thank you all. And we have quite a good representation of different industries, technologies in the current environment, and also a good geographical scope. And Gianpaolo, could you also introduce yourself as a co-moderator today?
Yes, hi there. My name is Gianpaolo Parigi, co-moderating on this panel, venture capitalist, chairman of a Single Family Office, and currently working on a roll-up of technology startups as well. Thank you.
Thank you all. And Sarah, could you please also briefly outline what are your current observations around your sector, portfolio companies, and maybe some of the initiatives you find the most interesting for both investors and entrepreneurs to find as their potential niche for development?
Yeah, I think as someone who's sort of looking at the ed tech and future of workspace, it's two areas where COVID is really sort of highlighting some of the needs and also some of the really deep fault lines that exist in our society today. So, as someone who's sort of spent most of her career on the operating side, starting a couple of companies and exiting in the education space, and now sort of sitting on the other side of the desk, a lot of the things that my colleagues and I have been talking about that need to change in higher education, that need to change in K-12 technology adoption, are things that we have wanted to see or predicted would come into sort of more ubiquitous adoption in 5-10 years. And now we're seeing that push forward sort of by 3 to 5 years. And, for sad reasons, but also for very, very good sort of opportunistic in terms of what our companies are looking for. So we're seeing a lot of, clear shifts in higher education, a lot of really interesting changes around what the future of higher education can look like, highlighting some of the needs for shorter term, lower cost, job placement focused reskilling opportunities for adults. We're seeing such a huge connection and tie between getting back to work and childcare. So a lot of these challenges that are very practical, sometimes unsexy, that families are facing in COVID times that are really highlighted are things that we're trying to address with our portfolio.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And Chris, you're also in EdTech. Could you also add something of your story?
Yeah, so what we're also seeing is really getting the teachers at K-12 area really start to focus on how do they not only provide information to the students, but also ability to teach online as well. At the university level, they're a little bit more used to, in certain cases, to be able to teach online through videos. But from a K-12, the teachers are not really used to being able to provide video learning online. So we're trying to give them a very easy to use ability to not only, what they've been used to is to provide lessons and curriculum and things like that, but also ability to show how things are done, especially for things like a little bit more on hands-on classes. And we're working with the school districts and the teachers to have the best ability to have classes online. So we're trying to build that component of it, but also build a pipeline to be able to reach the kids who don't have the high bandwidth, the ability to get that, in the rural area. So we've been trying to work with the various school districts in Florida, as well as areas in California to have that ability.
Thank you very much, Chen. And Sarah, what would you recommend for startups to keep in mind to sustain and succeed in the current environment, especially in your areas of expertise?
Yeah, I mean, right now we are kind of getting right back, probably in the last 2 weeks or so, getting right back into sort of investment mode and looking at companies, actually writing a few term sheets in the last 2 weeks. And we're actually seeing a lot of really interesting counter-cyclical activity, companies that are thriving in this time, taking advantage of what's going on to sort of, reach more market share. I think some of the things that we're definitely seeing for our existing portfolio, as well as companies that we're just kind of advising, I have a whole portfolio of companies that I've angel invested in as well in the education space. Instead of sort of, 9 to 12 months of cash flow, we are suggesting 18 to 24. For those that are selling to school districts, we're, pulling back on some of the, pushing them to kind of really close deals that are multi-year. So there's a couple of things that kind of operationally that we're making sure they have enough to sort of see through the next fall and understand what the enrollment challenges will be for the next school year.
Thank you so much, Peter. And what's going on in your sector?
Well, we came to the sector in a rather abrupt way. So we're based in New York City, and a kind of financial hub for sure, if not the capital of the world, as many kind of can feel. But a bunch of hospitals came to us to say, hey, can you help us understand the risk of being overwhelmed and the risk of having to protect our staff and all these other things? And what all this had grown into is actually a consumer application. I haven't done a consumer business in a very long time. So that would just allow people to understand their personal risk, because this is an unusual time from a perspective of seeing this risk not as something which is like a natural event. There's a cyclone in India right now, but none of the population can do anything about it. It's just happening, and you kind of have to succumb to it. A pandemic is something different. Your personal agency can actually have an effect on it. And we think that's interesting, and democratizing information relative to it has a lot of value. So please check out, there's a website that we pushed out called COVID Risk Live. It's covidrisk.live, that actually has a personal by zip code risk. We're pushing out it. Right now it covers just US, and there is kind of in plan to do something for Canada and UK and India and the rest of the countries, including much of Europe and so on. But the big thing that we saw is, as we did that, as we helped hospitals first, and as we kind of helped consumers, if you will, just ourselves, so that we know how to protect family and friends, our standard financial clients came to us and said, hey, GDP, unemployment, rates, all of our modeling now is all upside down, because we don't know how to handle a situation where the model that we knew before that dealt with kind of steady state issues is telling us absolutely unfathomable results. So can you help us integrate into this kind of world of uncertainty and really mystery, something that you learned about the disease dynamics across the board? So we basically have taken the consumer product that now is able to integrate individual risk across the board and integrate it into somebody's financial system, so they can grade their portfolio. There's a tremendous swing between companies that are affected by COVID, just in their value in their market, and companies, their stock prices, but also bond market and all the other financial instruments, all the portfolios. They're positively affected or negatively affected by COVID. And there's a tremendous swing between what the future pretends to drive that higher or lower. So we're very interested in kind of giving that kind of push into that space, so that people can lend again, if you will, people can underwrite again. VCs can look at their portfolio again and understand what that really means from a very granular perspective, So we think all that is kind of a huge swing that is probably like I mentioned the cyclone in India, but it's more like, the asteroid that hit, I think, one part of Siberia and then also Yucatan that really dealt a terrible blow to the dinosaurs. So anyway, that's a little bit of the context and the thoughts behind kind of what we're looking at.
Nadia, sorry, I have a question for Sarah again, as to leave us a bit early than the end of the panel. So Sarah, you've been an operator before, and now you sit on the other side of the table. How do you gauge the transition? Can you tell us something about this experience?
The transition from being a founder to an investor?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting, to be brief. I really do actually miss the getting into the weeds, building, seeing direct impact, having a team and growing. Some of the challenges I don't miss, dealing with crazy customers and fundraising all the time. So there are pluses and minuses. I think ultimately when you're an entrepreneur, it's sort of part of who you are in your DNA, and that's hard to kind of remove. And sometimes I do have to hold myself back when I'm talking to portfolio companies. I get so excited about every single person and I fall in love with every founder. However, one of the amazing, benefits is I get such a broad view of the sector, which is really fun. It's like, every time I talk to an amazing founder, I get a masterclass, a deep dive into some really specific topic. And that is so rewarding to be able to kind of try to connect the dots. And I love being able to empower them with capital. I think one of the things that's particular to edtech and the future of work, higher education, learning, human capital, there are some nuances to our sector that, generalists who's kind of spent their life as an iBanker are not going to understand, hands-on, and, spreadsheet won't reflect all of that reality. So having been a founder, multiple exits in different parts of the world, both in China, as well as Southeast Asia, Middle East, and the United States and Europe, I think when I'm talking to founders and they're looking at who I want on my board, who do I want, and I can call at 4 a.m. in the morning, who understands what I'm going through with this school district or this university or whatever, I think it puts me at an advantage, right, to some other investors. And to be honest, when you're kind of competing for top companies to squeeze yourself in a deal, it's equally competitive. So investors also have to compete to kind of win over the best founders out there. And there is, quote unquote, a lot of dry powder still in Silicon Valley. There's plenty of cash to go around. It may be a little bit more stringently released than before, but it certainly still is there. And so that's one of the things that I think is really important, is that, having been on the other side of the desk, I'm speaking to some of the specific issues with deep empathy. And I hope that not only helps me get my foot in the door, but it also truly, helps me add value to the company as they grow.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We welcome you also to join our investor panels for pitch competitions. So you are more of an active mode now, investing, looking for new companies. So welcome to join our roadshows across the world. Kiran, would you also share some of the initiatives for the community you do and your case?
Sure. I guess one of the big things that we've been up to since the pandemic started is we've been working very closely with authenticating medical masks that are moving through global supply chains. So, I had no background experience in PPE or in not even much in supply chain. But what we found was one of our partners' technology, using blockchain technology, was able to pre-verify or pre-credential these suppliers in China, so that we could attach all the FDA documentation, all the regulatory, necessary documents to the actual physical products, so that when products came into the US and in Canada, the consumer or the procurement officer of the hospital or, the government entity would be able to just use the stock camera of their phone and scan the QR code, and it'll actually give you all the information and authenticity of these medical masks. So this is done, through our partners' technology at Real Items. They're based in California as well. But so we've been working on, bringing trust and transparency into the global PPE supply chain. It's been amazing learning, and now we're doing a initiative to build on top of this. So we're doing an education, technology education workshop next month. It's going to be on how blockchain solves the problem of global supply chains, and we're actually going to apply the case from our learnings that we've experienced. And so we'd love to have participation, and actually all the ticket purchases are 100% going to health foundations in Canada, Bermuda, and possibly US and Jamaica, because we'll be actually purchasing the masks from our suppliers and donating those masks to the healthcare foundation. So we're not taking a penny off the top. We did not at our last educational workshop, and we just really hope that the community can come together and take advantage of a time where people are willing to learn, open their minds to alternative systems and processes, and really try to adopt technology in an effective manner so we can all, benefit and work better internationally.
Thank you, Karam. And Chuck, would you also experience something of your sector?
Yeah. So, as the future of work and school has kind of come into question, that also brings in the future of the real estate market. So, I'm in residential rentals. So we work with mostly, small independent property owners who just have maybe 1 to 5 single family homes. Um, right when the health crisis started, leasing activity in terms of new leases took a hit. So it took about maybe a 20 to 30% hit when the shelter in place order went into effect. And so that was a difficult period to get through. We had to really adapt to the change in behavior for how people were renting. So one of the projects that we had been working on for about a year was a conversational platform, sort of a chat bot that allows someone to go from listing to lease in a period of minutes. And it leverages all the technology around virtual tours, and we use an AI to basically communicate between a renter and an owner. So we accelerated the timeline of that project once the pandemic came around, and we were able to deploy it to our portfolio. And the leasing activity went back up. We had about twice as many people as normal who were actually applying to rent a home before with sight unseen. And so people are renting long-term, we service long-term rentals, usually annual leases. And so people you can start to see a shift in consumer behavior where people want to start shopping real estate like they shop Amazon. And that includes in the rental space. So that's been a big change in kind of the consumer behavior. And then, the rent, we collect rent, right? So we're processing millions of rent every month for our portfolio. Luckily, we've been able to maintain, still about a 97% rent collection rate in April. And I think May, it's about 95%. So it's dropped down a little bit, but our portfolio is relatively stable in terms of the properties that are occupied, paying rent. So that's been strong. And then, some of the things we've focused on. So one of our investors and advisors is the chief of AI at Google. So he's advised this AI platform that helps us, automate a lot of the real estate process, the rental process specifically. And we actually took some of those learnings, and we saw that there was an increase in online rental scams happening during COVID, and a lot of people, a lot of these what we call scam lords, were posting fake listings online. And so one of the initiatives that we did in the past couple of months is we built an AI that helps people detect a rental scam and avoid being defrauded in the rental process, which is really important as renting homes goes online in this new world. So that's something, and that's called scamlord.ai. And that's been helping renters we've actually helped some renters avoid getting scammed out of thousands of dollars. You see these landlords posting these fake listings and trying to take advantage of social distancing. So that's something that we built and deployed just in the past couple of months, and it's a free tool for anyone to use. So those are some of the impacts of what we're seeing in the residential rental sector.
Thank you so much, Chuck. And Justin, would you share your story as well?
Yeah, sure. Would be happy to. So Chuck and I are in the same industry on the prop tech side. So I can echo a lot of what he mentioned. So I'll just kind of expand on some of that. From what we're seeing, one of the primary challenges that COVID-19 is creating is one of the customers that we serve are these real estate operators, these landlords, and they really kind of have this lack of bandwidth. There's issues where they've got their upstream financial commitments on the debt service side of their properties, and having their hands tied from a rent collection perspective, and wanting to have open communication channels with their tenants to set expectations. And they're kind of getting squeezed in the middle, and it's a tough realm to navigate for them, and without, unduly, placing that burden on their tenants and being kind of that. You hear those stories of these landlords that are kind of being jerks about it. They could be using a lighter touch. But long story short, that creates a bit of a lack of bandwidth for these operators. And so that creates a challenge for those of us in the prop tech space, where the sales cycle can get a little bit longer during these times, as we have to have some patience for the customers that we're serving as they deal with their financial obligations. But there are a lot of opportunities that are creating tailwinds for us. There's a huge renewed interest in remote management and automation, ways that we can create redundancies where we may find ourselves needing to reduce those human touch points, particularly around social distancing, and creating more channels of communication, because communication is key as uncertainty abounds and creates kind of some fear on both sides of the table for landlords and their residents.
Thank you so much, Justin. And Sarah, in terms of your investment criteria now, what is the most important criteria you are looking at while in your investment process?
Right. So Peak State Ventures comes in at around, our average check size is around 1.5 to 2, 3. We go up to 5 or 6 million. We've sort of written certainly much smaller checks. We have a lot of flexibility, but generally speaking, around the Series A to C. In the future of work ed tech space, we're generally focused on things that are post-secondary. So after high school, adult learning, how is that fundamentally changing for human beings with now 15 jobs across 5 different sectors in our career on average. So with all of that cyclical kind of spiral learning curve changing so frequently that we look forward to, how does that fundamentally change the way that we learn in universities as well as in companies and even later life? We also are really excited about companies in the early childhood space because we still think that's really fragmented, needs a ton of technology and modernization. I'm personally really interested in 2 other areas. Aging tech, so technology, innovation, unlocking human capital for folks that are 50 and above, and the many decades that they're going to live after that and what they're doing in society. I'm also really interested, even before this, we also invest in digital health at Peak State Ventures. So the overlap between kind of training of medical professionals from head to toe, from physicians, specialists, all the way down to, 6-week certification for, medical technicians of some kind. So that is a huge gap, and it's a worldwide gap in talent that only technology can really solve at scale. So yeah, we're looking for amazing founders for super growth, of course, wonderful teams, excellent execution, great backgrounds, all the usual stuff. But most importantly, an idea that is truly compelling.
Thank you, Sarah. And Chris, could you share if you had to pivot a bit your business model, or how do you experience the current crisis? So what steps you had to implement in the current environment?
Yeah, so as we continue to build out, helping initially on the K-12 side, one of the things we're also helping the schools to understand is how are the kids actually going to take to learning online. I've been pretty lucky to have both a child in a high school as well as in a college. My son is going to UMass at Amherst, but I don't know when he's going to go back. They haven't mentioned when he's going to be able to go back to school yet. But as far as my daughter is concerned, who's in high school, we're really trying to help the schools to understand, not only are they logging in, but, it's just more than just logging in that they just go away. We need to have some type of a monitoring so that not only do they log into the online learning, but also have the participation so that they are actually, doing the ability to have a dual directional communication with the teachers. But also, we're also adding the data analytics and data analytics, as well as the AI to help the school districts to understand what and how the students are learning. Are they making progress in certain areas? How are the methodologies that the teachers are teaching? What is working? How are the method of teaching working online? And also to have a predictive learning on how, are the kids going to benefit from this particular type of teaching. So all these information we're trying to provide for the school district so that they can take back with online learning, which they weren't getting when the students were, in the classroom itself. But also looking at what's going to be the new norm going forward. So are they going to have, the kids go back with, sitting next to each other? How is that going to happen? How is going to happen with in the lunchrooms and the auditoriums? How are we going to help with all that going forward? Because the new norm is going to be something that's going to be, the future of what's going to be. So we're trying to look at, the different various ways of bringing in certain kids, to come back certain days and so forth. So we're trying to help the students adapt to the new norm going forward.
Thank you so much. Kerem, would you like to add something in the scope of online learning education?
Sure. I mean, we've been a fully remote, decentralized business from the start. So virtual education and workshopping is kind of something that comes natural to us. So I think it's just more about how to make it interactive, how to engage your audience, how to make it fun. Sometimes you got to be more of a personality than you normally would to, have people enjoy the process of learning. We make sure to keep things relevant. We go and we get all the steps completed to issue continued education credits for CFAs, CPAs, lawyers, to make it so that, yes, you have time because you're at home now. So, whether it's lunch to brush up on new skills or the evenings to, learn something new, but also have it, contribute to your, obligation to keep learning. So I think that's the really cool thing about, this digital era that we are weirdly moving into through this pandemic is that, we have more time for ourselves while we're at home, but we can still be working at different hours of the day or a different pace. So I think it really does give people the opportunity to learn new things, be creative, step out of their comfort zone, and you don't necessarily even have to go outside to do that, right? Or to a room full of people that you don't know. So, I think it's an amazing opportunity to showcase technology, and I think the world as a whole has a more open mind right now to learning new things. So I guess that's really it from my side.
I have a question for all of you in the education business, but it would apply also to other sectors. What do you think technology hasn't done in the recent past, when it comes to education that could otherwise have done?
So I can take that on. So one of the things that I think that hasn't done well is the ability to utilize a lot of training material, online videos that can help, at least, especially in the K-12. So one of the things that a lot of the teachers do is to give a paper and for them to just go out there and just go do some research or whatever they need to do. But when you're talking about younger kids, fifth grade, sixth grade, or even younger, they like to be. That's something that the technology could, I think, really help to show them, on videos on how to do certain things, how to learn certain aspects. But the biggest challenge so far has been the the broadband availability to all the kids. And that's what we're really trying to help. I believe there's in certain school districts, they're up to 70, 80% of kids who just doesn't have the ability to get the broadband access to the kids. So they're not able to get that. So we're really working with these school districts that does not have the ability to reach out to those kids and give them that ability, and get them the school districts and the teachers these videos to help them learn while they're at home, and also during the summer months and even the spring breaks.
Thank you. And Sarah also mentioned that in her company, Peak State Ventures, they also invest in prop tech, digital health, and other areas. Peter, would you address what currently you observe in terms of your investor relations or fundraising rounds? Is there any specifics currently, and what are your own plans in that area of fundraising?
So as I've kind of mentioned, we've developed this exciting value proposition to how to integrate the COVID risk and the idea behind existing ways that financial institutions or others even lend or borrow or do anything on credit or otherwise. And we're very interested in figuring out the best go-to-market for that. On one hand, it would be expedient to kind of build a almost like a terminal business where somebody could come and learn how to do that, which is a rather extensive undertaking, especially in the current market. But in a lot of other ways, a lot of our customers who are also looking at portfolios and otherwise are very interested in the results, because there's a huge swing between kind of the market pre-COVID and all of the covariances of instruments for that versus kind of post-COVID. So we're exploring all options. We've been very fortunate heretofore to be profitable from the start, and have not looked for outside investment since founding of the company. We've always kind of been profitable and have grown. So, but I think this is a special opportunity to go out and actually seek funding to capitalize on what we've learned and how we can operate. So I think that from that perspective, it's an exciting time for us.
Thank you. Justin, would you also add something of your experience in that, in terms of fundraising and your investor relations?
Sure. So we're very early stage. My partner and I have self-funded thus far. However, we have been speaking with investors during this time. By and large, it seems that to kind of echo what Sarah was saying earlier, there is investor appetite out there. I think expectations around timeline and valuation need to be adjusted with regards to the global pandemic. And people are just trying to figure out how to go through these processes outside of what has been the traditional methods. From my perspective, I do enjoy the fact that I haven't been having to fly around the country. Gives me more time with the family. So I guess there's some silver linings to it. At least that's what I like to try and focus on.
And Chuck, would you also share some of your observations?
Yeah. So I guess I've experienced all the same things of what Justin is saying. I think on top of that, there's a lot of interest from, I think this was already a trend that was starting to happen before the pandemic, but it's kind of accelerated now, where LPs or high net worth or family office are doing more direct investments into startups and companies, and we're starting to see that. And I think part of it is the fact that there's they need to get more of their money into in the private markets, and they're not seeing the kind of returns that they would hope just with putting it into these funds. And so we see that these LPs are not only putting their money into the venture funds, but they're also now going to more direct with the startups. And so we see that as a trend that is still continuing during this pandemic, and we probably expect that to be sort of how the future of capital allocation and fundraising works. We're going to see more of that kind of direct investment from LPs.
Thank you, Chuck. And Kerem, would you like to share something of your experience on that?
Yeah, so relating to the investment landscape, I guess. So I've never had to fundraise for any of my businesses. So we've self-funded, bootstrapped all the way through. But I've raised funds for clients, and right now we are doing a 1 seed stage and 1 Series A for a client. Seems like investors are pretty hot and heavy about tech right now. So I think it's still good. I don't think it's really changed too much. I think if anything, I'm in the blockchain space. So blockchain was a bad word for the last 2 years, and no one wanted to really deploy any capital. But right now, with the world being in the state that it is, and technology taking a forefront in enabling automation and trust and transparency, through decentralized communities, we're seeing a lot more interest right now than we had in the past. So, fingers crossed, there'll be a good fundraising season for us this year, and hopefully a lot of happy clients and happy investors. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. And in terms of the formats of your investor relations now, so lots of conversations are held in Zoom. So we also moved all our blockchain forums, economic forums online, and run a number of online roadshows every week from all over the world. So what are your current experiences with the new formats? Can you share something on that? Who's ready? Kerem?
Sure. I think it's great. I mean, I'm really happy you guys reached out to us. You guys gave us some more extra reach that, I think is what the community building is all about. It's about, building off of each other's networks and connections to, get the messages that, we want to communicate out there. So really, I think these are great opportunities. I think, it was Justin who was saying, he's tired from flying around. Like I'm tired too. It's been last few years of, flying around to get the message across. And, I think a lot of us have built those relationships, and this is a perfect opportunity to build on those relationships, right? And really provide them with the materials, provide them with the research, sit down and grind through all the work and give your investors what they've been waiting for. And, end of the day, it's a beautiful pitch deck. It's a clear, concise presentation, and then it's all the data backing it. And you don't necessarily have to meet someone face to face to deliver all that. So I think this is a good experience for all of us to have to go through and practice these new skills.
Thank you. Justin, would you like to share something of your experience?
Yeah, I guess bouncing back and forth with Kerem on this one. I personally love teleconference technologies. I have long wanted to get them more utilized just in my day-to-day because, staring at the back of my windshield, driving around Los Angeles or flying back and forth, it's just lost time. It's lost productivity. And I don't have a lot of time. I'm busy working 24/7, building things. So every minute I can reclaim is valuable. It's like having a time machine, which is always kind of the joke. It's like, if you could have one thing, what would it be? A time machine. And so I love this, being able to have this kind of value remotely over video chat is something that I hope that when everybody talks about, going back to normal, I don't want to necessarily go back to normal as it was. I'd like to have a normal plus. All these things that we've learned, all these new skills that we've gained, all these new behaviors that we've adopted, and carrying that forward for it just makes a better life for everybody.
I totally agree with you, Justin. I think this is the new normal. That's it. We're well into it. And
don't get me wrong. I would love one day that, we could all go get a beer together too. I really enjoy face-to-face interaction. Don't get me wrong. It's just, finding the right balance and having it, swing back and forth, and we're on the right path.
I think also that, this Corona really forced us and pushed us a lot further along to how we can work online, right? So, I mean, before, we used it when we absolutely had to. We would go travel and we would meet in conference rooms. And then for the ones who don't even, who are not even coming in on Fridays, they're forced to come in because we're all meeting face to face. Well, a lot of these Zoom meetings and a lot of these digital meetings are going to get a lot better because we're going to be forced to use these things. And I think this will become the new norm, as you were saying, Justin and Paulo. But I think we're going to be able to do a lot more than just be able to talk to each other. We'll be able to collaborate and do a lot more online versus what we've been able to do. I think this Corona just kind of pushes the technology to be able to add more features so that we don't have to be sitting next to the person who's sneezing on us or touching their papers and pens and whatever it is. But I think this is going to be the new norm so that we don't have to make all these travels. But Justin, you do make a point, and there are going to be some times and we really do need to fly out there and do the things. My implementation team will need to go out there from time to time and do the things they need to do. But when it comes to these weekly calls, monthly calls, meeting with customers, I think a lot of that can be done on these video chats.
Peter, I have a question for you. The experience you had with the hospitals during the recent outbreak, do you think it could be repackaged, reconditioned, and exported to other markets, to other hospitals around the world, so that you could, let's say, piggyback on what you had to learn impromptu on this case? What do you think?
I think so. We will have a kind of a suite of products that deal with the kind of things that the folks in the hospital systems had to deal with. There is a more general applicability to protecting the health and well-being of staff. What we're learning from the viral dynamics kind of science is that the key things to exposure, and there's still a lot of uncertainty, but the key things to exposure have to do with amount of time and volume you spend with a virus. And of course, hospital workers were most exposed, but there are other people who are in a very similar situation as well. Folks who are, bus drivers or folks who are on a train, conductors and so on. So there are applications from a protective perspective that kind of go beyond that. And there will be an offering. We have something on a roadmap that would take it kind of globally, and that helps kind of think through incorporating risk for the hospital from a surge perspective, because as we talk about new normal in terms of the Zoom conferencing, one of the other new normals I think that's gonna come out of all this, the new normal of living with a virus. And even with all the things and all the great hopes that we have, from vaccination to herd immunity to all the other things, still a lot of uncertainty in terms of how it may work and how infectious it may continue to be. So this kind of flexibility and responsiveness, I don't believe is going to go away. And I don't think we want to kind of shut everything down again. So I think starting with kind of broader reach for hospitals, exactly as you mentioned, doing personal things, as we said, that was the first kind of extension that we did, the individual score so that somebody can react to that. Packaging that for businesses so they can understand risk better and they can lend or borrow better or provide inventory better, we think is a big deal. So we see that this is something that we're going to have to live with and account for, so to speak, for many, many months and probably years ahead, for sure.
Thank you, Peter. Chuck, you mentioned patience with the tenants that had to temporarily default on the rent. How much more patients can be embedded in the system in residential real estate in the US, you think, before, you know, there's some cracks in the system, especially with some of the forecast predicting on a worst case scenario in a sensitivity analysis and unemployment up to 55 million.
Yeah, yeah. I think, you know, there's always been this kind of age-old divide between the property owners and the renters, or, you know, traditional verbiage is landlords and tenants. I think we should get rid of that verbiage and just call them owners and residents or renters. So I think patience, it really comes down to more about proactive communication, you know, and renter and property owners, you know, proactively communicating with renters, or renters proactively telling their property owners if they've been financially impacted by COVID. That kind of communication needs to be happening in kind of a real-time basis. And that's one of the reasons why our product is built around a chat platform or conversation platform, is to kind of give that communication real time, let people know, hey, have you been financially impacted by COVID, making sure to collect the proper documentation so that they show kind of financial impact. And then, you know, and then getting people onto a payment plan or deferral plan. I think we have about, out of our portfolio, maybe about 100 properties or so that are on a payment plan and have deferred their payments. But the vast majority have, you know, still been able to pay rent on time. Like I mentioned, about over 95% collected. So I think, yeah, I think patience, it really comes down to, you know, communication, and that's how you can kind of extend that period of patience, is making sure that landlords and renters are communicating. If a renter is able to pay even, you know, partial payment, you know, it's still good to keep the money moving through the system if you are financially able to pay your rent. So if you're just withholding rent just for the sake of not paying, but you're still earning the same amount of income, then we wouldn't recommend that, right? So keeping the money moving through the system and having proactive communication throughout the process is essential.
I have a sticky issue that Chuck, feel free to answer, and Justin as well, of course. A minority report style. Do you expect predictive analysis and algorithm to come and trying to profile, you know, whether tenants are more likely to default? It's very sticky issue, I think.
Yeah, I can absolutely validate that is on the minds of operators. I've actually been specifically asked our ability to deliver such a model, where taking into consideration the various data points, like, you know, job sector of a particular tenant and payment history and financial solvency, and being able to come up with a predictive output saying, oh yeah, next month expect only 80% rent to get paid. I don't know how, I mean, I'm sure that there's ways that information can be used for evil, but at the same time, operators need to work with their financial obligations. And to the extent that we can equip them with the ammunition they need to make a case to who they are beholden to, they can then facilitate lightening of the burden with their residents, being able to offer programs. So, I mean, they're middle management. They've got to kind of manage up and manage down, and it puts them in a tight position. But another thing I wanted to bring up, and how we can bake in more patience into these mechanisms. I've been seeing a lot of interesting insurance products that can provide guarantees on rent payment. So either a landlord can insure their unit in the event that a tenant isn't able to pay rent, or a tenant can find insurance to support them if they find themselves in a position where they can't pay rent. And so I think by adding in kind of that additional expense layer into the day-to-day operational overhead for a particular real estate asset, you can bake in some wiggle room that does allow some patience, and gives people more breathing room and brings down the pressure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. And we'll have a final round of questions to all of you. So if you would like to address something of the key areas of focus for serial entrepreneurs and investors, please share something as a summary of our today's conversation. You can address something which is important to your particular segment or sector, or just in general as a community role. Chris, are you ready?
I am. So yeah, so one of the things that I think that our sector is really doing is, I mean, it's really you know, we're finding that the need for this education technology is just you know, everybody's really you know, asking for help in this in education technologies, mainly because as as the schools remain closed, it's just really you know, they really are looking for options to really help the kids to really have an option for learning when they're away from classes. So you know, one of the things that we've been trying to help, and our sweet spot is really originally we weren't really into ed tech, but we were really into helping the airports and sports stadiums and shopping malls really get the information from customers and target marketing for those customers. But we really made you know, more focus on education technology, because we started seeing a lot of school districts really needing our technology to help them get that distance learning in place. So now we're working with you know, foundations and government entities to help us with our fundraising. And now, you know, I'd love to speak with Sarah a little bit more in the future to find out what her idea is about and seeing what she thinks about how we're doing. So, you know, this, I think ed technology is really going to be not only for the near future during COVID-19, but going to be, you know, what is the new norm going to be for education technologies, not only K-12, but in higher tech as well, because we're also working with universities as well to help them to grow. So,
thank you, Chuck and Karen.
Yeah, so I'll keep it short and sweet. I think for entrepreneurs, this is the time where great entrepreneurs are great. It's times of adversity, times of change. So, you know, I think everyone's got to keep grinding, keep showing why you're the one running that business and, you know, making your team proud. And then for investors, I think, you know, let's keep that funding coming. Let's keep entrepreneurs working. You know, the future is coming a lot faster than I think a lot of people had expected. So, you know, tools like this, being able to do like digital learning and being able to be in the room with people and, you know, really like move to the next kind of generation. I think, you know, let's go there together. So really excited. And for everyone, you know, wishing everyone all the best and the safe and healthiness. And, you know, we're in this as a global community together. So whatever we can do to help and give back, I think the technology and entrepreneurship groups really have to get creative, and that's what we're good at. So with that, thank you guys very much for having me.
Thank you. And Justin?
Yeah, sure. So for me, just some closing thoughts. I've been thrilled to hear a lot of the edtech story that's been bounced around during this discussion. I'm a father to 3 kids, so that is a personal concern of mine. Just the ongoing education requirements and how we navigate that in the post-COVID-19 world. Also the logistics and supply chain stuff. Karen was talking about some of the companies he's been working with. I find that to be very interesting because as we hit these kind of macroeconomic speed bumps that occur, I look to those sectors to help us smooth out that ride. And then just from my own perspective on the real estate side, I know we all see how retail is suffering, but you know, I think it's office space that's going to be the real long-term victim in the overall scenario. retail will bounce back when things move forward from here. We'll all be going back to restaurants and this, that, and the other eventually, whenever it's safe to do so. But unfortunately for office space, we've all really just learned how to be incredibly productive without their incredibly expensive product. And I've been hearing from a lot of people, they're now building distributed remote companies that won't have office space. It's something that I am very strongly looking into. And other companies that are downsizing their office space and promoting more work from home, now that they aren't as scared about this productivity drop that just, I mean, all the evidence has never really pointed to that. And especially when you have the behaviors and the technologies at your disposal to be really effective at it, you look at your $50,000 a month rent and start to wonder why. So,
yeah. Gianpaolo, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to close on this note when it regards to office space. I think brace for a lot of reconversion.
Yeah,
and on the
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And actually, I hope so, because we have a housing crisis here in the U.S. And then hopefully, if we have an oversupply on office space, we can maybe see some buildings getting converted from office to multifamily, kill two birds with one stone. That would be good for everybody.
Yeah, mark your words. That's exactly what's going to happen. I believe in that so much.
Yeah, that's why we enjoy the people from different backgrounds, both entrepreneurs and investors, to get that synergy effect thoughts between the segments, cross segments, so that you could grasp from each other and generate some new ways out of the current situation. Peter, would you also share your thoughts?
Well, my message would be quite hopeful to entrepreneurs for sure. There have been great businesses born during the time of crisis, and you can go back to financial crisis, 2008, 2009, or even before, around the turn of the century. So my sense is work hard. There are wonderful opportunities to be out there. And then on a personal side, all the things that I talked about personal agency, we can all make a difference. So we can kind of stave off the second part of the curve, so to speak, and flatten it out. And the community aspect of this is very powerful. So I'm excited to be part of the community and to do our part with hospitals, individuals, and then all the funders, so to speak, all the hedge funds and large financial institutions are our prospects and clients. So I think we can all do our part, so to speak.
Thank you, Peter. And Chuck?
Yeah. So I think my message would be to entrepreneurs, which is, I know right now is a time to really redefine the why behind your business and your product and what you're working on, with, especially if you have built a team. Being stuck behind the Zoom all day can have a certain effect on the mind, right? And so making sure to engage with your team in creative ways that are that go beyond just work, and making sure to remind people of the why behind what they're doing is critical during this time, because people are stuck at home and they're stuck behind their screen. So I think now is a good time to kind of redefine that with your team or with yourself as to what are the values that you uphold as you emerge from this crisis. And that's not only important for internal, but also for your customers. And, people will remember the brands that stood up during this period of time that really stood up to help people during this time and get through it. And so, and as far as specific to, the sector we're in and real estate, definitely watching the same things, Justin, you're talking about with the conversion of commercial to residential. Really curious to see what happens in the short-term space as well. Airbnb, 95% of bookings vanished in COVID. And so it's very interesting to see how travel and vacation rental and kind of short-term rental, how that'll be looked at in the future. I think it'll come back to a certain degree, but it'll never be the same. You're going to have a lot of real estate investors right now and through this crisis that are going to be washed out of the market. And I think people that are in over leveraged in short-term rental are going to feel the impact of that most. There is going to be a lot of questions around the future of living and where people will live. And so just like in ed tech, where you're looking at, okay, how can people, learn from anywhere? Now people are going to work from anywhere. And so that has big implications in the real estate market. And you start to see this mass exodus, or what I call the grand, reclassification of housing that's happening, where if you work at Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg just told you yesterday, you can work from anywhere indefinitely, right? So sounds like a good deal. So you can move to a lower cost location. Now, one very important point there is that Facebook will pay you less if you're living in a lower cost location. But I think this will redefine, suburbia, especially for America, and there may be a rebirth in this idea of, having your home with a yard, and people in Silicon Valley that are stuck in these, 400 square foot apartments are going to be maybe looking elsewhere to live. And so that's going to have big implications in the real estate market as well.
Thank you, Chuck. So we now, in the current pandemic, have around 200 million people in Zoom every day. So lots of things changing. And Sarah, you are an active investor with, for instance, one of your companies, Peak State Ventures. You mentioned that you not only invest into edtech, but also prop tech, digital health, and future work. So what would be your summary for our audiences?
So many great thoughts today. I think the big thing that I'm noticing here, and it's confirmed by sort of the founders and the real estate folks especially, ed tech used to be thought of as a sort of nice to have. It's a laptop, it's an electronic textbook or whatever. But now what we really are seeing is that technology in learning is a fundamental part of our infrastructure and our economy. And if that doesn't catch up, then we all can't catch up. If you want to move you want to move to the suburbs or the middle of America because of better quality of life and a larger house, your family's education has to come into that. It's just a fundamental part of the algorithm of these big paradigm shifts. The current education system, even the calendar today, starting in September, ending in June, is agrarian. It's based on a farming system. We are no longer there, folks. So all of this fundamentally has to change. And it has to be agnostic of geography. And I think we're getting there. I think we're realizing it. We feel it viscerally day to day for those of us who are running companies and also teaching children at home. And I think now, hopefully, that impetus will force a shift that is in dire need of changing in the education system. But I have a lot of hope because the folks that are kind of wrapped around in this ecosystem are the ones that are going to make that happen.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And Gianpaolo, would you share your summary as well?
On the education, so long helicopter parenting. I think technology will take on from now, and it's a good change. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you for participating in our today's session, brainstorming session of Startup Leaders Club. Please join our further events. We have it 3 times a week, and also our online roadshows and panel discussions. You all can also share your masterclasses or keynotes on your particular industries if you want to share it with the community. You're also welcome to do so. And stay in touch between all of you and with us as a venture capital community. And I wish you good luck in everything you do for the community and for your own businesses and funds. And stay healthy with your family, friends, and all the connections you have.